Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Trin, and I have Jennifer Pham here. We're going to talk about some designer babies, aka Gucci babies, as I would like to call it, or Jenny likes to call it bougie babies, but whatever works. So Jenny is going to do the introduction, so you can go with the introduction.
So here, when we're talking about designer babies, we're talking about people who are picking and choosing specific traits for their child, or on a molecular level, people deleting and adding specific genes to one's DNA. Here on Michelle's profile, we have a comic where the mom says, "We choose your sperm from a genius sperm bank," and the father saying, "We choose your egg from a fashion model website." Here the baby's thinking, "Why would I want to have anything to do with you two stupid, ugly people?" And then on the side, you see them both talking to each other. "We got just what we wanted for." What this comic brings readers to realize is that when picking and choosing one's own genes, they could create this so called new human race or human beings, which can also bring multiple different ethical issues. Um, Designer babies are still science fiction today, but nowadays with technology advancing, it really does come close to a reality. In simple term, designer babies, also known as genetically modified babies, and simple definition is designer baby is an embryo that has been genetically modified or edited for the sake of producing a child with specific traits. In some cases, unfavorable characteristics or bad traits can be removed, and the more favorable ones could be enhanced or added. So we have two types. One could be pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, PGD, where the embryo has a genetic defects that are identified, pre-implanted, and only embryos devoid of certain genetic disorders are implanted. On the other hand, an evolution of genetic technology is known as CRISPR-Cas. CRISPR designer babies are created by modifying DNA fragments to prevent and correct disease-causing genetic errors. Cas is a special technology which can remove or add certain types of genes from a DNA. Um, and the more traditional type is where you would pick and choose babies from a booklet for IVF.
Oh, sorry. Sorry,
That's okay.
I was about to cough. I was like, excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the reasons for designer babies. So there's a lot of different reasons why people go for designer babies. For some instances, you have a couple who have two daughters, but the mother is at an advanced maternal age. So say she's like 50, 40, and they want to carry on the husband's name. So a lot of times in the culture, you want the son to carry on the name, obviously, because the wife takes the husband's last name in certain um, cultures. And there's one way to do that. Others is that in certain situations where a couple has just sons, right? And they did have a daughter, but the daughter passed away in a fatal accident. So the couples want to have a daughter. So there's that instance. But I feel like the increasing trend is because of more of celebrity hype, and you have high profile celebrity couples who are able to access and are actually able to afford these types of procedures. I call it procedures. Procedures or modifications, and the pricing I'll go over later. We'll go over later on. But you have couples such as Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, and then you also have Chrissy Teigen and John Legend, who have done the designer baby method. There's a lot of other celebrity couples as well that I could probably list, but uh, it's just increasing because they're able to afford it. They can modify or enhance features on their children. And so, with that, then we're going to get into the ethical issue. So, Jenny, you can go on to the ethics.
Yes, so according to Fadden and Powers, there are a couple of essential dimension of well-being that might be undermined. For one, attachment. These babies will soon realize that they're different from one, their family, their parents, because they were chosen with by specific genes. They don't feel like they are connected with their families or socially with other people. They might not feel like they belong at all. Another thing is self determination. Children are unable to pick and choose their own genes, so what makes it okay for their parents to decide exactly what they get to have? Um, so, gene editing already exists in nature, and that's the reason for natural selection. Um, some may think that you don't need to pick and choose your own genes because nature already does that itself. Um, Another thing is, it could benefit some family members or some human beings because it can prevent and cure disease. But on the other hand, like picking and choosing the baby's gender, eye color, or having one being more intelligent than the other is another thing. For example, like designer babies or editing genes can help identify abnormal chromosomes such as Down syndrome or identifying any mitochondrial disease in offspring. Now, Michelle, can you go ahead and go over the pros and cons with us?
Yes, I
Michelle?
can. Yeah, sorry. I was
Okay.
trying to
Okay.
unmute myself and I couldn't. I was like, I'm struggling here. Okay, so I'll be going over pros and cons. So the pro is that it's a pretty neat, like, treatment in a way, or accessibility for couples, because you can actually decide on lots of positive and good genes from a genetic pool between two parents. For example, if balding runs in the family on the male side, then you can actually take that gene out, which is pretty cool. I didn't even know there was a separate gene for that. And then you can also choose like height, intelligence, also facial features, the color of your eyes. It's basically like going to the supermarket and buying whatever you want, nilly willy, and just putting it in your shopping cart. Um, and then it also helps out with patients who have IVF, who are infertile and need to go through IVF. And there's also medical health benefits too, or purposes, because obviously some families are more, my cat is going crazy, there are more concerned about cancer genes and diseases such as Down syndromes, or um, what is that, the breast cancer gene. So actually they can go and, I think that they can do is they can remove that or access or see if there is a gene there for certain cancers and kind of modify that to help prevent it and for the kids to have, so that the kid can have a long future. And I think that's pretty cool. So there's justified reasons for genetic editing. But with that in mind, with the justified, there was one quote unquote scandal, or one issue. There was a professor or a scientist named He Jiankey in China. So what he did was, I thought it was pretty interesting, but it's actually pretty ethical, I guess. Yeah, no, it's ethical. It's ethical. So what he did was that he genetically modified a set of twins to so that they wouldn't have HIV. So the mother had HIV. So what he was able to do was he was able to take that HIV gene out of the twins so that they wouldn't have to live with it. Because with HIV, it can be pretty costly sometimes, but nowadays you have good treatment for it. But the issue with that was that some people believe that he was out to seek money and fame rather than the purpose of medicine. So that was a concern there with doing modifications on twins. I mean, the mother was able to give rights. Like, okay, yes, go ahead and, modify my twins' genetics so that they don't have HIV. But on the other hand, people think that's not right. You're not doing this for fame. I mean, you're not doing this for, the sake of medicine or science. You're doing this for money and fame. So that is an issue. So moving on to cons, you are limited in what choice you have. Obviously, if both parents have like black, brown hair or brown hazel eyes, you can't really have a kid with blonde hair and blue eyes. That's not how it really works. You have to get the gene from the parents themselves within the genetic makeup. So you have to do that. Also, there's an issue with disparity gap. So obviously it's very costly, and I'll tell you what the cost is because it's insane. But it widens the gap because there's only so many people that can afford it. I mean, celebrities can afford it because they can put tons of money into all this, or even people who are able to take care of themselves or even afford it. But those who are in the lower income range, they can't afford it. They don't have that luxury. So the cost of it kind of really adds up. It costs way more than my tuition for school and way more than what I can afford for my mortgage. So when it comes to the IVF treatment, especially because the modification has to be done outside and then has to be reimplanted. So the IVF treatment is like around 10K or $10,000. And then on top of that, with the IVF treatment, you have to have you can take or you take medication for that. So that's around $5,000. And then the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is assessing what genes you have, or what genetic stuff you have, like cancers and diseases such as chances of having Down syndrome or certain types of cancer. That's around $4,000. Now, picking the selection of facial features, eye, hair color, balding, all that stuff, that's around $18,000. And then you'll have simple genetic tests, and that just runs around $200. So with all that in mind, it really does add up. And the one concern that I have with this, and you may have a concern with it too, is that with IVF, especially people who have a hard time have a hard time carrying a child to term, there's still that issue. It's not 100% successful because even with IVF, you could still lose that embryo. So you're spending like, I don't know, 50K on one treatment, and then there's a chance of it miscarrying, and then you just lost 50K. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to keep up in the low income area, but in the celebrity world, that probably may not be the issue. So Jenny, what do you think about this whole like designer baby?
Well, as you mentioned, designer babies or what you called Gucci babies, bougie babies, they're really spendy. And
Hmm.
like you mentioned already, only the rich can afford these types of procedure. Um, Even so, like it's negatively looked upon, considering how one, it widens that disparity gap, like you mentioned, and picking and choosing your own genes, your baby genes, is really unnatural.
Hmm. I think
Um,
I think
Go
another
ahead.
thing is that some people think that, okay, I don't get, like, some people don't understand the concept of designer babies because we know some people that are like, designer babies, that's a pretty dumb concept because my kid's already a designer baby. I think, which I totally understand, but I
But I
think
think the
between,
first thing that comes into my mind when someone say designer babies is, oh, they're genetically modified,
yeah.
versus like, oh, I'm gonna pick and choose my baby's traits in a book. So,
Hmm.
but even
Yeah.
so, IVF is really costly, and there's nothing wrong with going with IVF when you
Hmm.
know you're infertile or you really want a kid but don't have a spouse. You
Yeah,
know,
and I think the other side of it too is that, so with what I mentioned balding, some people or some families or husbands are embarrassed with balding, which is understandable, but it's such a common trait. So I think parents want to, or even dads want to kind of get rid of that balding so that their kids don't face embarrassment. But nowadays you have treatments such as, you can actually do hair implementation if you wanted to do that. I don't know what the cost of that is, but you can do that. I just feel like it's so spendy. Like, I think I'm fine
Yeah.
with probability of, what
Mhm.
my kid will have, Although the cool thing is that if there's a cancer gene that's threatening the life of my kid, then I'd totally be down to take a look and do the genetic diagnosis, you know?
Mhm.
There's always that.
Yeah, I understand on the health level, but in terms of appearances, it should be, love yourself. It's who you are.
Yeah.
There are people who love the way you are. There's no need to genetically modify.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, like, and it's kind of sad, because again, celebrities, they can do whatever they want. And why is there a Coke in here? Sorry. I'm looking at my desk, like, there's a Coke here. I don't know why that's there. Um, and people look up to these celebrities. And so they're like, if she has a designer baby, I want a designer baby. I want to pick and
Yeah, it
choose my
becomes a
kid.
new norm.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so far from where it's not a reality. It's there. It's
It's still
not,
the
it
talk.
doesn't, it's still a talk. It's not a huge, like, oh, we
Yeah.
could give this to everybody, we could prevent cancer. That'd be
But
crazy.
who
But that,
knows, Michelle? Like I mentioned at the beginning, technology is, it's advancing and it's advancing really fast that
mhm.
pretty soon we're going to be talking about this even more.
Yeah, but have you seen like those movies? I think there's like, is it Galactica or Gattaca? I don't remember, but I remember watching this movie back in high school about these these group of people that were genetically modified, and they all look so similar or something about that. And this guy had like an identity crisis. It was kind of insane. I forgot what movie it was. But
I
anyway,
don't know.
it was a long time ago. I don't know. If I figure out what the movie is, I'll let you know. But I just found that interesting. I don't know. I'm kind of glad we picked this topic.
I do too.
All
But I
right.
think that's all that I have to say about this topic.
Yeah, me too. I think we're good. So thank you for
Okay,
coming.
thanks everyone for
Yeah.
listening.
Thanks for coming to our podcast. You guys take care. 2 more months till
Bye.
2021.
Woo.
All right. Bye.